pint-sized retro. All this and more coming up on This Week in Retro.
High-resolution color graphics.
This land of high technology.
The revolution in technology that made the information age possible.
Those kids are not afraid of computers.
Gaming, Dan the Pub.
Diddy Dos.
And say cheese.
Cheese. All this and more coming up on this week's show. Up-to-date news for out-of-date tech. Hello, gents. Did you all enjoy your week off? What did you do with it?
Yes.
I've watched the last show twice because there was nothing else to watch. No, I didn't really.
What, our own show?
Yeah, our own show. Just watch it 2 weekends in a row.
We did have quite a few comments from people saying, where are you on Saturday when we didn't turn up? Even though we tried to give you as much warning as possible. So we do apologise that there wasn't a show, but things didn't align last week. So we had a week off. And hopefully the bumper show that you had before we went away satiated your appetite for all things retro. This week, or these last 2 weeks, we've had a really busy time at the cave. I had David Rowe, who was a video game artist, and so much more besides. But I know him from the box art cover of video games, like he did that Populous box art cover, Spin Dizzy, Chubby Gristle, and we learned something really fun about the Chubby Gristle cover and who it was based on. All sorts. This was part of a patron day at the cave, and it was recorded, so it's on the RMC Retro YouTube channel now, if anyone wants to learn all about David Rowe and his artwork. And it was just a really nice event that reflects on exactly the kind of event that I want to be happening in the cave, which is just a really interesting guest speaker. People that come can enjoy it. People that can't can enjoy it as well through a recording. It all worked out beautifully. So thank you again, David, and everyone who came to enjoy that and who has watched it. I've also been going down a Microprose rabbit hole, which I think you'll like, Chris.
Ooh.
Because you don't know this, but when you came to visit the cave, you were 12 minutes away from where the UK Microprose office used to be.
Are you serious?
One of them. Two of them, in fact. Two of them in a place called Tetbury.
Wow.
So once I realised this, I've grabbed my camera and I've been driving all around the area, filming these buildings and tying it into an episode that I'm working on. So looking forward to sharing that. Feels a bit creepy, I have to say, taking a camera out in public and just filming things in public. It caught me by surprise because I don't do it very often. I'm normally filming in the cave. So when I was sort of holding the camera up and there were people around me, I thought, oh, this feels a bit odd. Yeah. But there you go. I stuck to it for the channel, for the cave dwellers. And other than that, you may want to look out for something interesting in that episode because I haven't finished filming it yet. Just this morning, I was using my clippers to clip my hair, clip my beard. And do you use clippers, Chris, or do you use a razor?
No, clippers. And
and
the wife does it. Yeah, Nikki does it. I just
Dave,
sit there.
Share your hair tips,
clippers.
Dave. Clippers,
I used to go to the barbers, and then when lockdown started, I started doing it myself. I'm not going back.
Yeah, so I do my hair without the shield on the clippers, do my beard with the shield on the clippers. Got a little adjustment on the clippers to go to like 8mm or whatever I normally do the beard on. Didn't realise it didn't have the shield on. So I just cut a huge chunk out of my mustache. And I was like, oh no, there's no coming back from that. So I've had to do a very short beard. So when you watch my next video, notice there'll be a moment halfway through the video where my beard suddenly gets very short. There's nothing I can do about that. Sorry.
It looks fine. I mean, it looks fine now.
It looks fine, but when you've got the 4K camera on there and, well, whatever, it's done now. There's nothing I can do. I've just got to style it out. Dave, how's your week been? You've got a new addition to your cave, I understand.
Yeah, so people may be aware, but I certainly don't want to talk about it on the podcast or go into any detail. There's some difficult things happening in my family life that made me think, go and do the things you want to do, Dave. Don't just keep putting them off. And I was going to get a cat before lockdown, and I never get round to it. I keep talking myself around it, and I'll get round to it. And then on Friday, I went on Gumtree, found a kitten, and on Sunday morning, I picked up a kitten called Dot, who is a Bengal kitten. She is adorable. She is tiny. She loves cooing into me and purring away. I'll give Duncan maybe a video clip of her or some pictures to put up while we're talking. She's adorable. I just want to sit and read a magazine with her cuddling into me. So she's great. I will need to carefully introduce her to Johnny. She's separated from him at the moment, and she'll be that way for a week or two. But she's adorable, and I can't believe how tiny and fragile feeling she is. But she's already very
I've
affectionate.
seen pictures. She's all ears and paws, and very cute, very cute. And I didn't know you were such an EastEnders fan, Dave.
Yeah, she's named after Dot Cotton.
Yeah, Dot Kitten.
Okay. No, she's not. I don't know. I like people names for animals, and I like people names for animals that people don't generally call animals. So I quite like Dorothy, and then before I knew it was Dot, and I might not even call her Dorothy and shorten it to Dot. I might just call her Dot.
Nice,
fantastic. Chris, bring us back on track. Give us some retro news from your week. What have you been up to?
It's kind of retro. I think I mentioned the Lego set that I got a while ago, the Galaxy Explorer.
Yes, yeah.
Somebody scribbled all over it. And the people that have scribbled all over it, I'll keep it short, but basically it's the winners of Lego Masters, a show I think I've mentioned several times before.
Sure,
so
yeah.
Channel 9, Lego Masters Australia, they had the Grandmaster Series, so the best of the best competing again. And the WA team, Scott and Owen, won, and I won't bore you with the details of how this was in their possession at the time, but they signed my Lego box, which is fantastic.
Brilliant.
So, and now I'm in contact with them as well, so yeah, it's cool.
I love that kind of thing, and I love that you can come on here and share it with us, because when David came and did his talk, I got him to sign some old video game boxes with his artwork on there, and then I'm really proud of those. I'm really pleased that he signed them and I've got to meet him. But who do I show them to? Show them to my brother or my mum and dad. They'll be like, yeah, well done, great. Who the hell is that?
Yeah,
but exactly. You guys can appreciate that, and we can appreciate your Lego signature. So thank you for sharing that, Chris. Maybe we should work that into one of our future questions of the week. Give everyone an opportunity to show off something that they're proud of, that they don't know who else to show it off to.
Yeah, that would be cool.
Careful.
Oh, yeah.
Well, not like that, Dave.
Yeah.
Go on, Chris.
Yeah, the only other bit of news I've got this week is as this goes to air, this episode goes to air, I will not be watching it on my couch. I will actually be at the Perth Amiga Users Group Meet 9, so I'll report back on how well that went.
Please do give us a special show report. Get some pictures and stuff. I'm sure you will on your channel anyway. But get something for the show. And if anyone's listening from the Perth Amiga user group, hello guys, and we hope you have a really good meet.
Thank you very much, Carol. If you do want to submit a jingle for it, we're happily accepting them. If there's a video part to it, fine. Doesn't need to be, though. We had some really interesting responses about catalogue shopping, and some people are clearly very nostalgic, very fond memories about the Argos catalogue. Really impressed with those. We'll read some out at the end, but have a look through the comments on YouTube and so on. Some wonderful responses there. We also talked about Atari buying up old IP recently. And another article was submitted to the subreddit, probably not worth covering because we've just covered the same thing, but they've bought up the rights to a dozen of their old 2600 games from Mattel or division of Mattel. So that's the third acquisition they've done this year. So they're definitely doing more of that. I didn't really think that when we got heavily into retro that the old games really had any value to them. I thought they were just, I know abandonware is not a thing, but that's what I thought of them as. But it's clearly not the case now. Everything is being grabbed up, protected and monetized. There's obviously upsides to that, in particular for casual or for non-technical people. It means that things are accessible and the prices are generally low, so it's not much of a barrier. You can go on Steam, perhaps a couple of quid, and you're playing the game you want to do, all packaged up. So it's not a bad thing that way. But it does kind of mean that things kind of become illegal that we thought weren't before, and ethically they should have finished their commercial life years ago. So that was quite an interesting thing to read. Neil, you had a wee note here about smells. It's probably best if you take yourself off mute, though.
Thanks, Dave. Do you remember in the last episode we talked about the smell when you open big game boxes, but also you got onto the smell of plastic toys and when you open them. And Mr. Lurch was talking about opening his, I think it was his Star Wars figures that he had, didn't he? And the smell. Well, somebody has come onto the subreddit and given us an explanation as to what that new toy smell is. I can't say I'm a chemist, so I can't verify this, but it sounds pretty believable. So I'll read it out. It comes from Tungsten Orchid. It says, as you predicted during the show, here is a post explaining new toy smell. The smell is most likely due to the plasticizer used. When most plastics are injection molded, they've been infused with a compound known as phthalate. It's PHTH ALATE, phthalate, which makes it more malleable. This is often done to make it possible to get the part out of the mold without breaking it. Over time, the phthalate will evaporate and the plastic will harden more and more, making it less and less flexible. As a side effect, this also makes the plastic increasingly brittle. And then there's a reputable source linked there. As you can see from the link, phthalates are potentially harmful, and when working with them, it's recommended to work in a well-ventilated space in order to avoid excessive exposure. Hopefully this helps to clarify. So thank you, Tungsten Orchid. If you want to find out more, go and click on the link there in the subreddit, reddit.com/r/thisweekinretro, and look for the post new toy smell. Back to you, Dave.
Actually, over to Chris for an update on the Tiny 486. You had something on that, Chris, didn't you?
Oh, yeah, that's right. So, yeah, the Tiny 486, I did make comment when we covered that story, and it's a fantastic little project. Literally. But I did make comment on the fact that he didn't play Doom on it, and he seriously, so Eric, I'm talking about, couldn't resist. I think lots of people had commented and asked, does it play Doom? I didn't specifically ask that question because I assumed a 486 DX2 100, which is the CPU in it. Of course, that's going to play Doom. But yes, he's released a short video showing the Tiny 486 happily playing Doom at what I can only describe as a frame rate that would have been the thing of dreams for me back in the day with my first PC. So, yes, it plays Doom.
So, I'd like to welcome new patrons this week. We have the Himble, we have Tony, Nick, Jason, Derek, and Paul. And also a thanks to James for a big increase to his pledge. So, thank you very much. It makes a difference. That helps us contribute towards the cost of equipment and so on. So, thank you very much for doing that. If you do want to join them, you can sign up at www.patreon.com/thisweekinretro. Link in the show notes. We're very welcome to join us. We'll happily read out your names. Or any instructions on your names. If you do sign up and you want us to read out your name in a particular way or whatever, send us a little message in Patreon. We'll make sure it happens.
Into our first story then, Gaming Down the Pub. This is actually an amalgamation of two stories, which I've mashed together because they both involve the pub. So thank you to Marin Bala and Osprey_Shower for submitting these stories to our subreddit. So do you guys remember when being a gamer was largely an isolated experience with the glow of the CRT on your face, your bedroom door closed late into the night? Talking about maybe your latest achievements in gaming in hushed tones with others that you'd identified carefully at school as fellow geeks. Maybe I'm over-egging it a bit because I was a shameless geek at school, and to be honest, I didn't care who knew. But I'll play into the stereotype of the American high school and the geeks getting beaten up by the jocks. It wasn't quite that bad. Dave is pounding his fist because he is a jock.
Well,
but as we progressed from school to college to going down the pub, I personally, and this is only my own personal experience, I don't remember video games ever really being a topic of conversation with that crowd as we discovered the pub and pretended to be grown-ups and tried to attract the opposite sex and all the rest of it. If I'd pulled out an Amiga and slapped that on the table after a few rounds, and challenged someone to a game of Kickoff 2, I think I would have been disowned and labelled an absolute nutter in my local pub. But times, it seems, have changed. People like Dave and Chris have clearly made it cool to be loud and proud about your love of gaming. And no better is this seen than in these two stories. So the first is of an Amiga Mini setup titled Bringing the Portable A500 Mini to the Pub. It's just a fun and simple setup of an A500 Mini running with a battery pack. There's a small screen. There are some peripherals, keyboard and mouse, all selected so that they can fit in a rucksack. And this guy is filmed in a pub, laying it all out on the table, on a sticky table, with a pint, playing on an A500 Mini. Now, I must admit, I didn't see anyone else in this video in the pub during filming. So I really want to see this set up on a busy Friday night to see what kind of reaction you get from people, not just sat in a pub on your own that you've perhaps got permission to film with. But nevertheless, it's nice to see it in that context on a pub table. Now, the other story that was submitted is linked to a local paper article over in Norwich celebrating the opening of Barcadia, a coming together of the arcade, a pub, and vegan junk food. That's their description of it, not mine. Vegan junk food, which is based in Norwich, which over on the east side of the UK. Quite a long way from most places, Norwich, to get to. I used to have to go and support sites at, I think it was Great Yarmouth over that way, maybe Hunstanton. It took me hours to get there. But if you're a little bit more local, it looks like it's well worth checking out. It's the creation of Peter Lee, aka Nostalgia Nerd, and Samantha Whitehouse. And I believe also Did You Know Gaming and Ashens are connected to the project. I'm not entirely sure how they are. It seems to be Peter and Samantha who are the faces of the project, but behind the scenes, there are other people involved.
Yeah, I think they're just local. Ashens is from Norwich. So that's why he's involved. I think the idea was he just wanted there to be a place like that in Norwich for him to go to.
Fair enough.
Sure. The bar's refurbishment was well underway when then a Kickstarter came along in March, managed to raise a not insubstantial £27,781 when it ended in April. And a few weeks later, the bar opened up with a selection of arcade cabinets, a jungle theme to the decor, and a comprehensive cocktail menu. So, chaps, it's, is it cool to take your retro to the pub? Is it cooler for the pub to bring retro to you? What are your thoughts? Are we the cool kids now? What do you think about all this? Dave, let's start with you.
I've always been cool. I mean, look at me. Actually, no, there is a serious point to be made. In the late 80s and early 90s, and probably all the way through the 90s, what was cool and what wasn't. And gaming was an embarrassing hobby at that point. I mean, you saw the PlayStation ads where they were trying to push it the other way and trying to they were so bluntly trying to make it look as if it was appealing to lad culture. But in the late 80s and the 90s, there was a pushback against hobbies in general. You were not supposed to have a hobby if it wasn't football, drinking, and women. Now, I happened to quite enjoy all three to varying degrees of ability, but it meant you weren't supposed to have other hobbies and you were shamed away from anything like that. You saw the TV shows mocking train spotting or photographers and all the rest of it. So I'm delighted that these days that's all changed.
Was it TFO Friday? Do you remember they had a segment called Ugly Bloke? And they just it turned out he was an actor, but just for the laughs, they brought on like a really geeky chap and sang the Ugly Bloke song to him. Ugly bloke, now we salute you. And then just had a chat about this geeky guy. Do you remember that? I mean, that kind of epitomizes the whole ladette culture, get the beers down, laugh at the guy that looks a bit funny sort of period. Yeah.
I'm thinking things like The Word and but mainly the Mary Whitehouse experience and that type of thing where they had they had Sados on and all the rest of it and that kind of language and so on. And yeah, it was funny and I was certainly laughing at it at the time. But I think now when you look back, it's clear it was the wrong thing to do. So I'm delighted now that people have all sorts of diverse and geeky hobbies that they can enjoy, and nobody is, or certainly far less people are trying to shame people out of it. And the other thing as well is, it used to be you weren't supposed to play computer games because they were for kids. And there's much less of that going on now. Gaming, as we know, is a huge entertainment industry. So most people seem to do it now. So I'm glad that that's all changed. As for Barcadia down in Norwich, I mean, Norwich is on, for people who are not too familiar with UK geography, Norwich is on the east of England. It's a lump down. It's not it's not classed as the southeast, but it is down the southeast of the country. It's a lump on the side of England, and you don't go through Norwich to go anywhere. If you're going to Norwich, then you're going to Norwich. You're not passing through on the way to somewhere else. So it's not something I'd be interested in going to because it's a long way away. But it does look pretty good. They've got quite a few arcade cabinets in there. They've managed to get quite a few in. And I like the idea of a pub, of a bar that's not quite the old man smelly pubs that we were used to. So if that's a nice place, if you're local to Norwich, to go and meet your pals, have a couple of beers, you can play a game until they arrive, or you can go and play a two-player game against them. Neil, you've talked about how competitive arcade play is something you've been brought back to, so maybe they appeal there. But I think I would need a real reason to visit one of those. There are barcades in Glasgow, which is near me. There's 2 or 3 of those there, and they are much more. They're darker areas with lots more arcade machines. But I think if I'm visiting an arcade, I would want it to be Arcade Archive. In the building with you, or something like that, or Arcade Club,
Dave,
somewhere where it's proper CRTs and so on, because I wouldn't want to go somewhere and play arcade games on a flat screen emulator.
Just to pull you up there, I can't say I've seen any photos of Barcadia having flat screens or emulators.
No, they don't.
They've got the real deal
no.
there. Yeah, just to be clear.
Yeah, they've got the real deal. They've got the real deal. Yeah, no, but there are your typical arcade bar in a city centre. And for the right reasons. I'm not disagreeing with them having flat screens there. I'm sure that's good fun if you're out for a pint and you're meeting your pals and you're playing on these games. It's fine, but I wouldn't travel to play on flat screens on an emulator.
That makes sense.
I would travel to see Arcade Archive, where there's the whole history going on, and it's packed full of arcade machines. Or if there were somewhere local like Nostalgia Nerd's place with real machines, then I would go there. But yeah, the flat screen stuff, not the same appeal to me. I'm sure it's fun on a night out though.
If I was local, I'd be down there every weekend, I think. Partly because it's not an arcade where you pay to go in. You've got to pay to go in and see them. You can just go into the bar, sit at the bar, have a pint, and enjoy the ambience of arcade noises and attract sounds going off and competitive gameplay going off in the corner. I think that's quite a nice thing. Have a dirty vegan burger and fries and hear that going on. So it's nice, and it's nice to have choice as well, because I've got to say, I used to be a regular pub goer. Maybe it's because the prices have got quite expensive. Maybe it's just because I got bored of it. I just don't go to the pub very often anymore. If I do, it's normally on a Sunday for something to eat rather than to socialize with friends. We find other things to do now. And I think certainly the generations that came after us, as every generation does, looked at us and said, that's what they do. We do something else. We find something new to do. And they didn't become raging alcoholics down the pub every Thursday, Friday, Saturday night like the generations before them. Plus, we've had lockdowns. So this is an industry that's had a really difficult time, and it's going to take new ideas. Arcade's not necessarily a new idea, but new approaches to, different ideas to, like you say, the old man pub. You've got to try new things, and you've got to see if people like it and if it sticks. So, I applaud these things. Chris, what about your thoughts?
I like both sides of these stories that you've brought this week. I mean, the fact that somebody's taken it upon themselves to make the A500 Mini more portable and take it to the pub, I think is fantastic. And it reminds me of when I first got a Pi 400, which I bought specifically just to run Pi Mega on. What I found myself thinking was, this thing would be awesome if it had a battery and a screen, and then realised that actually that's just a laptop. It's been done. An underpowered
laptop, Chris.
It's been done. It's a Chromebook. So yeah, it has been done. And in fact, ages ago, I did actually use my obsolete, which I've got here, obsolete Asus Transformer TF101, which is actually an Android tablet, but I got an Amiga emulator running on that, which is exactly what I'm talking about. Way back before, the idea of running it on the Pi 400 came into my mind anyway. So I'd already done that. So it doesn't surprise me at all that someone's done that to an A500 Mini and had fun with it. Yep. My eyes don't work very well with small screens these days, Dave.
I should have mentioned, last time I was down at the cave, which is just over a year ago now, Neil, it's been that long. Last time I was down at the cave, I brought down my Mr. Multi-System, which is a consoleized Mr. And it's much easier to port that about than other things. But I also brought this 12 or 14-inch surprisingly good screen, and that works off a phone charger.
Nice.
And the Mr. Multi-System works off just a power brick, and that was fairly portable, and that is actually great. That was great, and it did just about everything. I'd forgotten I'd done that, but yeah, I'd got a laptop bag, and I was able to fit the entire setup in a laptop bag, and I would think it was better than using a laptop for that.
There is something to be said for small screens and retro gaming, to be honest. I know it's not great for our eyes, but I do love the way it squishes the pixels up. And, makes
That's
old
true.
games look like they're in HD.
That's true. And some of these laptop screens are bigger than the CRTs we'd have had in our bedrooms back in the day anyway.
Oh, yeah.
For myself, I don't see myself as somebody that would take that to a pub and sit there playing, in all honesty. That's one step too far nerdy for me. If I'm at the pub, I'd rather concentrate on the drink and the conversations, and I do still like to
concentrate on the drink.
Yes.
Concentrate.
Oh no,
Just
serious.
Focus, Chris. Focus on the drink.
5 minutes to finish this.
Where would you take your A500 Mini then? If you wouldn't take it to the pub, what would you use? On the train, on the plane?
Okay.
Where would you go with it?
No, not portable. My A500 Mini sits proudly in the other lounge, plugged into the 42-inch.
The other lounge. Hang on. This man's got 2 lounges.
3.
3. He's got 3 lounges.
One's currently
Living
a craft
the dream,
room.
Chris.
One's currently a craft room. Anyway, look. The lifestyles of the YouTubers. Nothing to do with YouTube to tell you that. No, one. Yeah, we could. Anyway, maybe one day at all. But it's plugged into the TV, and I love the fact the A500 Mini is USB powered. So if your TV, which a lot do, they have a USB port. You don't even need a power brick. You just plug it into the USB port of the TV, and there you go. You don't need anything else. So that's where it sits. Where would I take it? I would certainly think about taking it with me on my trips back to the UK, because I catch up with schoolmates, or I catch up with my nephew, all people from that Amiga gaming era. And that is a really good use case. Just your travel Amiga. Hey, do you remember when we used to play Back to the Future, even though it was rubbish, Back to the Future 2? Let's have a go. And, you can just set it up on their TV and off you go. Plug it into a modern screen. Yeah, fantastic. That's where I'd take it. But using their TVs.
And I think both of you guys have been to barcades, haven't you? You've experienced the barcade one way or another.
Yeah.
Only once, but yeah.
But it's not somewhere that you've chosen to go back to, or is it just because of the location?
The actual barcade, and not Nostalgia Nerds barcade, but the barcades that we're thinking about, where they've got like 40 or 50 different machines, they're great if there's a group of you. If you need to meet some friends somewhere, it's a good place to meet. You can always go and play a game and whatever, and have a beer. They almost all have. They're almost licensed. That's fine. It's not the place to go primarily to play games, if you know what I mean. I've got a better setup on the Mister with a CRT to play games and arcade controls than they have there. That doesn't mean their games are rubbish, but it's something to do. It's a reason to get customers in. It's a nice place to go and have some fun with your mates. And it's not quite. I don't think it's a destination for me anyway. Where I have a room full of stuff already, it's not a destination to go for that.
There is an opportunity there, though, to set up things like tournaments, and really get into a game in that way, either as a spectator or as a competitor to test your mettle. But it's going to be interesting to see how it evolves, what events are advertised for the place, and how successful it is, because it is a business model that we've seen survive in some instances. For example, there are NQ64 arcade bars. There's places like Arcade Club, which are primarily arcades first, but have the facilities to have a drink and things like that.
Yeah, that's the other side of things, the Arcade Club, yeah.
Yeah, so flipping it around. So, will it be a success? I hope it will be. I think it's going to be tough when the dust settles and the buzz moves on. as we've seen with the Arcade Archive, huge interest in it when it first opened, and we got all over the BBC News nationwide. Lots of people coming. Lots of people still come, but not to the same degree as that initial buzz. That's just normal with a visitor attraction when it opens, be it a aquarium or a barcade. That's just how it works. I understand there's also an established arcade in the same town called Retro Replay, which satisfies retro gamers' needs, albeit in a different environment, but there is competition close by. What I'm really interested in is not something that was ever mentioned in the Kickstarter, but it's, will Barcadia become the backdrop for the YouTube channels of the people that I mentioned, for Peter, for Did You Know Gaming, for Ashens? Yeah. There's no mention of that, but if they're smart, I think they will use it as a filming space to give them not only a unique backdrop for their videos, it will also double as an advert for visiting the space and for people to step into the channel. They're then not just going to a barcade. It's like, oh my God, I'm going to Nostalgia Nerd's place. I'm going to step in. I might get a chance to meet him. I'm going to be in the channel, which is something I see at the Cave every weekend. You know, people looking a bit confused, a bit sort of excited. Oh my God, I'm in the Cave. This is really weird. I'm in the television, and I love that. I love it when people tell me about that. So, you know, it creates an aspiration to visit by using it, and it would save money on renting other space, whatever space they use currently for filming. Dave?
So are you a celebrity then?
No, the cave is not me. No, I do love
you
people who know the channel.
That makes you so uncomfortable asking that question.
Can you sign my Lego box?
It is really nice talking to people who have followed the channel and remember things about videos that I've made that I don't even remember, and they start talking to me about it. I'm like, just remind me, what video was that? What did I do? What did I say? Oh yeah, okay. My memory's not that great, but yeah, it's lovely to chat to people, and you know, no doubt Peter and everyone else will get to experience exactly the same, or probably already have now that they've opened and people are visiting. But yeah, if it's logistically possible to pull it off with everything else that's happening in there, if they can use it as a studio and create that aspiration to visit because it is the channel and not just a barcade on its own, I think that would really make it work. So be interesting to see if it does. Watch this space. And if I'm ever in the area, I do hope to pop in and see what it's all about.
We are sponsored, thank you very much, by Pixel Addict Magazine. Pixel Addict Magazine comes out every 6 weeks, and it is a digital lifestyle magazine, which means it covers not just the games that we like, but all the other periphery of nostalgic things that we like from the past. Neil? Does
it have any tips on using your hair clippers? Is that part of digital lifestyle? So I don't shave my mustache up again.
My tip is charge it first, Neil, because you ran out halfway through today.
Did, yes. So I had half a haircut this morning, yeah.
And pay attention to what you're doing.
There you go. Pixel Addict, if you want me to do a feature for you on digital lifestyle tips of grooming, haircuts, beards, I'm here, guys. Call me.
Grooming Dave. Special. It's a new issue. And the new issue has, I'm presuming it's Gareth that's on the cover, because he does all the covers. It has a shelf with lots of different stuff on it. I like that they've got the Hobbit on there as a harken back to the previous cover that had the wonderful Hobbit on it there. And the cover story this week is preserving our past. So the cover feature this week is preserving our past. Neil, our past. Well, I put my teeth in before I record.
Preserving our past.
Yeah, Neil, you've had a look at that. Tell us about
it. Which is something that if Fast had their way, it might have reduced the amount of preservation that took place because there would have been less piracy.
That's
true. I see what you're getting at there, Dave. Our cover story this month pays homage to the members of our vintage computing and retro gaming community who painstakingly archive physical media such as punch cards, floppy disks, magazines, and manuals. We feature exclusive interview guests including Jason Scott from the Internet Archive, Andy Spencer from the Retro Computer Museum, Alex Crowley from the Arcade Archive. He didn't tell me he was featured in the magazine this week, but Alex is in there. And Keir Fraser of Flash Floppy fame and many more, including a teletext artist, Dan Faramond, and the wonderful work that people do in capturing teletext pages from old VHS videos and the like to preserve those. So that is a story that's right up my street. I'll look forward to reading that one. And ties in with what I've been doing this week as well, which is I recently got myself a grease weasel. which
Ooh.
caused much hilarity when I casually said in the office to Lily in front of Richard, "Oh, Richard, I got my grease weasel today and I've been working on it upstairs." She's like, "What the hell is a grease weasel? What's it doing in
It's
the
a
cave?"
euphemism, Lily.
How are you finding it? Because
Fantastic. So far, I'm taking SCP images, so those flux level images.
Yeah.
And it just seems to work with absolutely everything that I throw at it, whether it's Amiga, Atari, old PC, 720, 1.4 meg discs, whatever I throw at it, it's working. So that will appear as part of the MicroProse video that I'm working on, by the way. But it's not about me. It's about Pixel Addict magazine at pixel.addict.media. If you want to go and check out more, you can get a physical copy down your local high street, ask your newsagent to stock it for you, or download the digital version from their website, Pixel Addict. And we thank them for sponsoring us.
Are you fed up yet with hearing me talk about how good DOS gaming is?
Yep.
Well, I'm sorry, but I'm not sorry. Here's more. Thanks to Pajako for submitting this story. It's a story from Hackaday about a DOS handheld. It's actually a little palm top DOS machine. Now, palm tops are a little bit larger than a desk calculator, a little bit larger than a mobile phone, or if you're watching this in 2026, they're smaller than a 2026 mobile phone. By the time they get there, they're getting bigger. Palm tops were popular in the 90s. Well, they were most popular in the 90s. I don't think I can say they were ever very popular. And into the start of the double O's, but they hit a wall fast and they died off. And I'm pretty sure it's obvious why that happened, because the mobile phone came along and that started to do their functions. You started to get things like the Nokia communicator, which was a mobile phone that it did some of the functions of what a smartphone did before you had a smartphone. Neil, I think you had one of those, I think. But they're not a form factor that I ever had or I particularly wanted, but they are really interesting. Neil covered what I think is most accurately described as a sub-notebook rather than a palm top, which is the Toshiba Libretto in an RMC video. I've seen it said that a sub-notebook is larger than a palm top and usually has a full keyboard. But I've seen palm tops with a full keyboard, so I'm not really sure what the lines are. The blurred lines there.
There were Scions with bigger keyboards than the Libretto, but the Libretto had a 486 processor in it. So it all gets a little bit confused and mashed up, doesn't it?
Yeah, so maybe sub-notebooks are often called palm tops as well. But the story in Hackaday is about brand new 2023 DOS PCs, and these things look really neat. They are recently made. They are perhaps made in 2023, or if not 2023, in the past few years. But what's maybe a bit misleading is that they're not using new components. And Hackaday do point that out. They're not trying to mislead us there. The spec of these machines is kind of 1990, 1992 for a desktop. And there's earlier 8088 ones for the mid-80s. But they're using components that you wouldn't be using in a desktop. At that point, they're using a system and a chip things that you would get from point of sale things, ATMs, that type of thing. Embedded systems typically used technology 3 or 4 generations before that was available cheaply, all integrated into one single chip, and low energy, easy to use, and so on. So this is the components they're using in this DOS PC. So while it's a new PC, it's not, everything in it isn't new. Now, Hackaday have the same conclusions that I do, and that what happens, and I can't provide any evidence to this, but I'm fairly sure I'm right on it. Chinese e-waste recyclers are taking old equipment and stripping it down. And once they have these old ICs, they're trying to turn them into new devices to sell. And I love the idea of that. I've seen it before on PCI SATA cards. So these are PCI cards that allow you to connect SATA drives to your PC. I'm not sure what the market for those really is. Is it maybe people setting up home servers or trying to get as many drives connected as possible? I don't know. I've seen it on graphics cards as well. So early GeForce FX 5500 cards that have been made recently. So these have been particularly, they've been around for years, and Phil's Computer Lab, for example, has covered them.
So you mentioned Phil's Computer Lab. I've been enjoying his photos from his PCBWay tour appearing on social media this week. Have you seen them? He's been popping up around the factory.
No.
Oh, have a look.
He's his channel's changed direction a little bit recently. He's been running channels for a long time, and his content is really good. His 100 and whatever it is in one Pentium MMX 233 video is the Bible for how to do a proper old DOS machine that covers everything. But all of a sudden, recently, he started putting his face on the videos. He's never put his face on. He's put his face on before. Don't know why he was hiding it. He's a lovely bald-looking man like us. His channel seems to have reinvigorized his channel. So I'm delighted that he's going to PCB to do that. That'll be really interesting.
Now, hang on. It's not Phil's Computer Lab. It's Phil's Lab. Phil, why have you got names so close to one another? Phil's Lab that went to PCB.
Because that's what they're called. When their mum and dad had the kids, they said, let's call them Phil.
That's true.
They call it Neil's Lab.
Sorry, Phil's Lab. Phil's Lab went to PCBWay. Nothing to do with Phil's Computer Lab. Carry on, Dave.
The cards are quite inexpensive, but it's harvested from, I think they've harvested them from laptops or motherboards. They've taken the integrated graphics chip off that and thought, we can turn that into a discrete graphics card. So that's quite clever. So I think what's going on here is really clever. But they're not budget. When I saw them on AliExpress, they were $250. But since they're using genuine PC components, they should be really nice and compatible. Although with PCs, compatibility isn't that much of an issue. Certainly PC emulation is better generally than other emulation. And they do expose the ISA bus, not the ISA bus, as you call it there. The ISA bus is exposed through a port on the side, so that could maybe have other things connected to them, like a sound card or a video card. Now, Neil, you've had palm tops and PDAs through your IT work in your previous life, is that right?
Yes, I have, including the Nokia communicator that you mentioned, which looks like a fat telephone, kind of like a wireless phone that you would have around the house, a house phone rather than a mobile phone. And then you would crack it open and it would split into like a little Palm top. I had Palm Pilots before that. I even had an Apple Newton for a spell. And I maintain to this day that all of those devices kept me better organized than a modern phone ever does, because on my modern phone, I constantly miss reminders, I miss messages because of the sheer volume of information that it's bombarding me with in the modern day. On those old devices, it was just what I put in there. There was very rarely a connection to the outside world to interrupt that or bug me. Or if I downloaded my emails, I did it in a batch processed way. I'd connect it to a serial dock to my PC. It would pull in the emails, and then that was it. You were disconnected again. So, but then the same could probably be said of a paper diary or a fun facts organizer. Did you have a fun facts organizer back in the day?
No. Is that a
You don't remember fun facts?
Like a file of facts, yeah.
It was like a little white Filofax with coloured stripes all over it and a big splash on the front that said Fun Facts. And it was, you had your calendar, you had your diary in there, but then you could go into W.H. Smith's and you could buy other Fun Facts information packs to clip into it because it had little, pop open and close binder. So you could get like your dinosaur pack or whatever and clip it in there and have your dinosaur facts in your Filofax. I'm not making this up. No?
No.
Well, you guys obviously never had any fun if you didn't have a Fun Facts.
We had facts.
Anyway, back on the story, the device that really caused a buzz was the 386 model. So I looked that up, Dave. It's listed at £413 on AliExpress. It's got the aerodynamics of a brick. It looks like a calculator with a 16:9 widescreen display on it. And in the description, it says everything is new on it with the exception of the main chip, which I guess must be the CPU. Yeah, that's going to be the 386 that they've ripped out there. AliExpress has it listed under the category of air conditioning parts. Don't know why, but it is. And it rather ambitiously shows Windows... Because it's cool, because it's got some cool fans in there to keep it cool. And it very ambitiously shows Windows 95 and Doom as examples of things that you might run on it, which, yes, they will run, but they will run horribly on a 386SX.
Yeah. They will walk.
Sorry, Dave?
They will walk. They won't run.
They will walk. Yeah, exactly. They're cruel. I do love that it exists. I wouldn't pay £400 for it. I know a man who has on our Discord, so we'll get his opinion on it.
Did
Chrissy.
he pay 400 though?
I don't know that he paid 400. Knowing Chrissy, he probably
I
had
think
like
the Hackaday article
AliExpress
just meant
credit
all the-
or something.
Yeah, all the regional ones have gone, and now it's just the ones at 400 that are left.
Yeah. But actually, I like the fact that it has ports for an external mouse and external keyboard. I think it might even come with them. Not sure with the mouse and keyboard. It's got VGA port. So that's what makes it for me. Lose the screen that's built in, lose the keyboard, save some money on its build, make it a 4860X266. Oh, that's the sweet spot. Put it in a little beige case, and then I'd love it. But in its current form, the form factor that it comes in, for want of a better phrase, I would describe it as a bit shonky. And, it seems like, well, it's a reminder that we learned an awful lot over the years about ergonomics through the development of PDAs and into mobile phones and how they evolved. And this appears to have missed school and forgotten all about that and missed the lessons on ergonomics. It's a sexy brick.
Chris,
True.
how'd you follow on from that?
How do you follow on for that? I don't know.
One sexy brick to another.
Sexy. Yeah, watch it. I know. I just think it's interesting how I think, when, back in the day when we were nerds, if we can call us that, there was a want for having a computer in your pocket. And I think for me, it was as early as things like the Atari Portfolio. And you had, different offerings from people like Texas Instruments and stuff that weren't quite as good, but they were better than calculators. Maybe you could store phone numbers and stuff like that in them.
Yeah, there was also the super scientific calculator that had loads of features in, or even scientific calculators that could run Doom as well, weren't there? So there was that bridge that as well into the palm tops and then the phones.
So there was this want for it, and then the phones kind of took over. So you're quite right, Dave. It's that's why the palm top computer as such didn't really get anywhere, because we ended up with a computer in our pocket just by evolving the phone. And we still call it a phone rather than a pocket computer, which is quite interesting when you think, especially a lot of the next generation, the last thing they want to do is make a phone call.
They're terrible at it.
Yeah.
I phone customers day to day on the phone, and the amount of times I say, look, do you have a landline? Because your phone's just not cutting it. And the phone, the actual phone quality seems to be the least thing on the list of important things for it. Yeah.
Oh, right. Interesting.
I don't have a landline.
No, nor do I.
We've still got one.
But sometimes people's mobile phones are just terrible.
The landline for us is for the spam callers to call us, and we just ignore it. In all honesty, it's just
we
goes to
gave up on
voicemail.
When we got fiber, we just use that for the internet, and then no need for it. I think you can get a VoIP voice package, and you can pay more for that. But I've got a mobile phone, so I don't.
I've got that, and I didn't want it, but it was cheaper to get a voice phone package than it was not to get it. So I just never connected it. I've got a phone number I don't use.
But I mean, I do recall like the early palm tops, going back to those, they were a bit like laptops and early flat screens in terms of the screens always had that sort of horrible lag, that blur. So the last thing you'd ever want to do is game on them. So I quite like this idea of a modern device, assuming obviously it's going to be a modern flat screen. So it's going to play well. So you can kind of have that experience in a usable form, if only it wasn't a 386 SX. That really does let it down. Wolfenstein would be fine, but you're not going to play Doom on this. You're seriously not. I just think, it's great to see a modern device using original parts. It's a good way to upcycle, so long as the donor machines were generic clones and nothing collectible, and assuming they were genuinely cactus in the first place. That'd be my only caveat. But other than that, I like it. Yeah.
The machines that these would have come from would be from tills from shops and so on. So electronic point of sale type devices. And they did go, certainly you could get Pentium, you could get 486DXs, you get Pentium 2s, Pentium 3 ones. So they could make one of these with perhaps a Pentium 2 or Pentium 3 if they wanted to. But they're cool little devices. I know that our friend Chrissy ordered one. I don't know how much he paid. He won't have paid £400 for it. But he ordered it, I think, before they started talking about it on Hackaday. So I'll wait to see what he gets. He told me he thinks he'll get it sometime in June. But I would bet money that other YouTube creators have bought some too, so I'm going to expect we'll see a video or two in it. Maybe Clint's got one, I don't know. We'll maybe see a video in these things, and I'm interested to see what use people manage to make for them. Do they find a use to make a niche use for it? I know Chrissy will put it on a shelf and forget about it, because that's what he does with all his money.
That. Come on, I can't see. What niche use could a portable 486 PC have that you can't already do on your phone? It's just going to be for enthusiasts to have some fun with and go, look, I've got Doom on a portable.
But if it makes its way into someone's life on a regular basis, I'd be delighted to hear that. But keep your eyes peeled. I'm sure there'll be more on it.
So this next story was fed to me by the algorithms. I know that's not a Reddit username. It came up on my suggested news feeds on my phone or my pocket computer, probably because I've been shopping for cameras recently, and therefore the internet thinks I love cameras more than anything else in the world.
Can we just all agree that from now on we're all going to call our phones pocket computers?
Yes.
Every situation, every context. Oh, is that your phone ringing? Oh yeah, that's my pocket computer.
That's my pocket computer.
That's my pocket computer.
Yes.
And then flick out the keyboard like that. Yeah.
Oh, look at Chris has got a keyboard on his phone. What is that?
This is an old phone.
Oh, okay.
Don't you wish that they still made them like that? Yeah. Anyway. Pocket computer.
Anyway, that was the last story. Carry on with this story.
I agree, though. All stories from now on, they're pocket computers. Absolutely. Anyway, so
Jeez.
the algorithm fed me the story, and it actually did a good thing, because the story isn't just about any camera, but about someone using a retro digital camera in the modern day. The story, which we'll link in the show notes, of course, is on petapixel.com and was written by Michael Zhang. Basically, a Formula One enthusiast named James 2 had tickets for the Miami Formula One race, and of course wanted to take some decent photos while he was there. Who wouldn't? However, the officials and security for the Miami race had put in some rather strict conditions of entry in place regarding cameras. The way the story is told is they pretty much tried to stop anything resembling a professional or semi-professional camera from entering. Total blanket ban, worded as follows: point and shoot cameras and cameras with consumer-grade detachable lenses will be allowed in order for guests to take photos, provided they are only for personal and private, non-commercial purposes. However, monopods, tripods, selfie sticks, audio recording devices, and video cameras will not be permitted inside Miami International Autodrome. Cameras may be subject to additional screening. Notice they didn't ban mobile phones.
No, that would be impossible. Do we know if this applies only to Miami, or is this a Formula One thing blanket?
I actually don't know, but I would assume it's just Miami. I haven't heard of this happening anywhere else. And
sure.
And the comments below this story, people are commenting about how, especially back in the days of Bran Hatch for the F1, they actually set up an area for amateur photographers to actually go and get better shots. Much better approach.
Well, what this story's reminded me of so far is the fact that when I played F1GP, Jeff Gramman's F1GP, there was no Miami track. And that's about where my knowledge of F1 peaked around about the early 90s. Same with my football knowledge as well, round about then. So,
not everybody's into F1, so we should probably explain. It's a bit like NASCAR, but you have left and right-handed corners. So anyway, I've made a joke about the phones there, but of course these days the phone does that job, so the ban really is a moot point. And I do actually get the idea of stopping people from throwing up tripods all over the place at events. I'm actually not against that kind of ban.
Please.
I'm actually on board with that. And the ban, of course, was for public safety, people tripping over stuff or having massive lenses dropped on their heads, and also to protect the commercial interests of official photographers. But still, anyway, James found himself at the pointy end of this ban. Being aware of the rules, he showed up with a Sony A9 mirrorless camera and a tiny 40mm prime lens, and yet he was still turned away at the gate. Keeping in mind, this was day one of the race weekend, which is only practice. It's not the actual race. So he had to leave the camera behind and enter without it. But 2 days later, for the actual race, he was permitted inside with another camera. So if you've been looking out for the retro link, here it comes. He took in a Sony Mavica MVC FD90. Yep, he shot photos, and I'll say quite good ones, of the F1 race on a floppy disk camera from the year 2000. So while everyone else is happily taking high-quality zoomed-in shots on their iPhones and even taking banned audio and video recordings, I'm sure, there was James happily swapping out 3.5-inch discs after every 6 photos and having a blast whilst doing it. We've covered a few stories about floppy disks hanging around in the modern day before, but I don't recall us ever discussing digital cameras. The year 2000, in fact, is quite late for floppy disks in a camera, I think, but Sony did it in the MVC FD90. Neil, what was your first digital camera experience, and what photos did you take?
My first digital camera, Chris.
Digital camera?
Well, on
That's
the
easy for you to see.
of the Sony Mavica, I do have that Sony Mavica.
Cool.
Yeah, that's an interesting question you raised. Why were they using floppy disks when there was solid state media then available? It's got to just come down to cost, isn't it? And the fact that it's still in people's mindset that floppy disks are pretty much disposable and cheap at the turn of the millennium. So they thought, okay, there's a massive selling point. I don't have to pay for film. I don't have to pay to get film. Go on, Dave.
I've just worked it out. If you have a memory card, you've got to erase the memory card. You've got to copy the stuff across and all the rest of it. The floppy disk becomes almost like film. You put the floppy disk, you take your pictures, and you've got that. You just use a new floppy disk after. That's a permanent record. Whereas with an SD
swap a memory card around, but yeah, I see what you mean. It does. It is a bit more tactile, a big chunky floppy disk.
Yeah, and a memory card you would wipe out. You wouldn't keep buying new memory cards, but you would do that with floppy disks.
That's true.
Yeah, definitely disposable. I took my Sony Mavica to a Christmas party a few years back, and people enjoyed the idea of being photographed on a floppy disk. It was like some kind of ancient Victorian technology that I was wheeling around, and the photos were low quality, but they were fun to share. People enjoyed it, so I've still got that on my shelf here to use from time to time. Now, my actual first digital camera, I can tell you exactly when that was from my Amazon history. I bought it on the 30th of December, 2003. So I must have had some Christmas money knocking about or something. I bought it with a 128 meg memory card. It wouldn't have been cheap. It was a Fuji FinePix S3000, had a 3.1 megapixel sensor. 6 times optical zoom was built into the lens. It wasn't a replaceable lens or anything like that. It's one of those ones where you turn it off and it contracts back into the body of the camera itself. And I took it to Kenya, and I took it to Barcelona, and then I took the time to print out the pictures that I took. I put them into an album, which I still have, and that's something that I rarely do these days because this was pre-Facebook. Facebook came around 2004. So that whole attitude of sharing your photos digitally with everyone on social media, that hadn't really happened yet. It was that middle period between film cameras where everything was analog and taking digital photos and sharing them digitally. I was taking digital photos, but I was sharing them over coffee in an album after having printed them off with anyone who would ask about my trips. Don't worry, I wouldn't make people suffer and say, come in, look at my photos, and make them go through hundreds of pages of photos. Nobody likes that. So it was that weird middle period. And to this day, when I pull those albums out and I look at the photos, I still think that they're some of the best photos I've ever taken. And I think it's because I took them with the mindset that each photo had quite a lot of value to them. I had a limited amount of space on my memory card. I knew that I'd be physically printing them out. So I took more time over framing them. And at the time of taking the picture, not in Photoshop afterwards, just trying to get a really nice shot. Way more time than I do now with an iPhone and a virtually unlimited amount of space and a ability to take a burst shot and take 100 and pick the one that I want from the middle of them all. So it really worked well, and the proof was in the results that I've still got in my album. Maybe I'm being old and nostalgic, but I've got really, really fond memories of that early digital camera. And I don't know that I'll ever be the photographer I was again. I know a bad workman blames his tools, but it just worked for me. It really did. And what about you guys? Did you have the same experience with did you have digital cameras in that period?
The first ever digital camera I bought, I checked through my purchase history as well, was a Canon PowerShot A800 10.6 megapixel camera. And I didn't pay very much for it in 2011. So this is really late. Now, I bought it because I wanted to take pictures of stuff to sell on eBay. And I wanted something I'd put on a tripod, because certainly mobile phones, I've got a lot of certainly personal computers that we hold in our hands have got a lot better since pocket computers have got a lot better since 2011 that way. Back then, if you're trying to take pictures of anything you sell on eBay, 3 out of 4 of them, no matter how carefully you held your hand, they would end up blurred. So I bought it for that, and it did its job. It certainly earned its place. If you're my top tip, if you're selling on eBay, the picture quality is so important. But before that, I'd been happy enough to use my phone. And when I went on holidays before that, I would just buy a disposable camera and I would just use that instead. I've never been into taking artistic photographs. If I take a photograph, it's to remind me about something. It's to remind me about me being there. You can always go online. If you go to the Grand Canyon, you want a picture of you at the Grand Canyon to remind you, put your mind back there, rather than a picture to look at the Grand Canyon, because you can go online and see wonderful ones. And I think cameras are a plague at events like gigs and concerts. Just put them away. Even back 20 years ago, they were a pain in the neck. Maybe if they give you, if they buy a ticket for a gig these days, they should give you a code. You can go and download a few pictures or a couple of minutes of video recorded at the gig you were in for your own memories. But you're at a gig and someone's got their phone out in front of them. Put it away. Enjoy the moment, and don't just stand there living your life through Instagram and all the rest of it on Facebook. And shut up, Dave, and stop going on a rant about this. But no, I do mean it.
At
just
how we've got to this
yourself.
place. How have we got to this
Just
place?
enjoy yourself.
Story of a floppy camera.
Young people.
This is a segue I was not expecting, and I think it's a valid one. And even what you were saying about photos, Neil. Sorry, Dave. Carry on.
I'm going to tie it back to the original story. So I do agree with what they're doing. I see the reasons why they're doing this. They don't want people to have to get past people's tripods and get people with their Instagram lights and so on, trying to make themselves as a content creator. I'm fine. It's important. You mentioned people taking a picture. If you paid a fortune, I'm assuming it's expensive to go to F1. If you paid a fortune to go to F1, then you'll want a photograph so you can look back 20 years later and say, oh, we went to F1 in Florida, that was amazing. So definitely take pictures. But all that kind of stuff, no, stop it. But I did like what you said about having the amateur photography area. Have one of those, let people go there, and just keep them out of the way of other people trying to enjoy it. So yeah, I do understand why they've done it. And I think using the floppy disk camera, though, is cool. What a brilliant way around it.
It is, isn't it? But I think this has gone into an interesting segue about how we've changed in society, and a lot about it is about the clicks and the likes. But it's just habitual. We pull out our phones and we stare at the event through a tiny 2-dimensional screen rather than looking in real 3D at what's actually happening in front of our faces, which is a shame. And we take hundreds of, if not thousands of photos that generally we won't look back at because we've got so many. It's too big a task to sort through your photos, so you don't look. And so I like what Neil was saying there about going back through the photo albums. And there is something more special about that because you took so few photos. And in some ways, it's a better memory trigger because you've got so little to go on.
I would say, though, that this is not the technology at fault. This is us at fault. This is all us taking too many pictures and not going home and waking up the next day and saying, what I'll do is I'll look through the pictures I took yesterday and delete all the rubbish so that I've got a record. That's on me for not doing that. I don't do that. I've got a Google phone photos from my portable computer, and I've got thousands and thousands and thousands in there. And thanks to my friend Pillock, who told me I can search my photos for things that it automatically recognises.
That's true.
Otherwise, I'd never find a thing in there.
Yeah. Main use for my portable computer, the phone, is taking photos of things because my eyes can't read them.
Sorry.
Have you done that? You take photos and then you zoom in on the photo to see what it says. Feel like, is this Panadol or is this something else? I don't know. Do I just keep randomly taking the tablets out of the medical box? Yeah. Anyway, whenever the conversation about digital cameras comes up, though, especially early ones, which is what we're talking about here, I always find it interesting because I've heard it even in professional workshops and that kind of thing, where people slam Kodak for not seeing the digital revolution coming and failing to adjust their business model. And I'm not sure that that's accurate. It's always confused me because the very first digital camera I ever used, which wasn't mine, it was one we had at work, was a Kodak DC-120 back in 1997. And since then, even pretty much every self-service print booth, you know, where you take your memory stick in and you print your own photos, has been either made by Fuji or Kodak. And I'm pretty sure they still make some of the print material as well. So they didn't disappear into the night. And in fact, whilst researching this story, I found an article suggesting that Kodak actually invented the digital camera back in 1975. So we haven't got time to go through that as a separate story. I'll just link to it in the show notes and you can make of that what you will. But they certainly did see the digital revolution coming. And like I said, it was the first camera I used. And it was a very good camera, just ran on 4 AA batteries. I'm trying to work out if it, because it's a blurred memory now, it was a very elongated device with its own mechanical zoom lens inside. And I can't remember if it had removable
Was it a telescope?
Or if you... No.
Because that's you've described a telescope.
Oh, yeah, you're right. I can't remember if the memory was removable or if you had to plug it in and download the photos and it was just embedded. That is a blurred memory for me.
I'm looking at a picture of it here, Chris. The back flips up and there's what looks like a compact flash-sized
it is a compact
memory
flash.
device that goes in the back.
Yeah.
And I think I've also read it's got 2 megabytes of internal storage too. So you could use it without.
There you go. So maybe
but it looks
blurred memory.
It looks more like a camcorder than a
it does.
photographer's camera, I've got to say.
Yeah, but it took very good for the time. It took very good pictures. Very enjoyed using that. This story only came about because I was shopping for cameras, and what I'd love to say, I got another Kodak, or even hunted down an original Kodak Instamatic 192, complete with 110 film. Do you remember those film cartridges that you would snap into the? No, just me. Okay,
ones with two things, and they would wind from one to the other, and that was it done.
It was like a cartridge, and the flash bulbs. You had like a stalk with its own batteries, and you put these flash bulbs on top with the floor. You only had 4 pictures and then all the globes were bulbs, sorry, we call them globes in Australia. All the bulbs would blow because you only got one shot.
Globes?
I don't know why they call them globes. I don't know. I keep trying to change the entire country back to English, but it doesn't work. But yeah, so I didn't grab one of them for the nostalgia, but I do love thinking about that. My very first camera wasn't digital, but that was my first camera.
Turn the globes on.
Turn the globes on. Yeah, I know you do. Yeah, I need to replace the globes, literally. Yeah, anyway, stop talking about the globes. What I've bought, Dave, after shopping for cameras and after the algorithm feeding me this story that we've been talking about, I jumped in with the masses and got myself a Sony Cybershot. In fact, I've got it here, the ZV-1F. It doesn't have detachable lenses, but I bet it would probably still get me banned from the Miami F1 Grand Prix if the story is to be believed. There was a pack so you could get the microphone. That is the ECMG one.
Oh, I see.
Microphone, so it's like a gun mic, and you can actually take it off and use it with a normal 3.5mm stereo cable. So I'll use it as an interview mic because I will be tripping people up at the Perth Amiga users group because I am the official videographer, so I'm allowed to.
Nice.
But so that's what that's for. But to come around full circle, the algorithm served me another camera-related story only this morning. Sony are about to announce the successor to the ZV-1 series of vlogging cameras. It looks like the new ones have a proper built-in zoom lens. This doesn't. And who knows what other improvements it has. So I'm instantly out of date. I've only just bought this damn thing. I'm instantly out of date. Sony, you... Duncan, you can bleep that out.
Time now for a question of the week. Take yourself back to when the Argos catalogue was a thing of wonders and dreams. Which articles did you circle? What did you highlight? What did you wave under the noses of your parents in the hope that they'd pick up on your less than subtle hints and buy you for Christmas? Or perhaps you were making a list and checking it twice of what you were going to buy when you next went down to the high street yourself. What did you reach for the Bic for to circle in the catalogue? So let's go to our subreddit, reddit.com/r/this week in retro, if you want to participate in our questions of the week or to submit any news stories that you might like us to have a conversation about in future shows. Now, I have to check with you, Dave. Has the question of the week been locked? Because there's a button you have to press, isn't there?
Yes, yeah. It's been no longer in contest mode. It's no longer in random order.
Right. I think you need like a catchphrase for this part of the show where it's like, yes, Neil, I can confirm that the comments have been locked or something like that. Something dramatic.
We need a game show kind of countdown music. Do, 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 do,
yeah.
do, do,
yeah.
do, do, do.
And then we unlock
there it is.
or we lock it. What do we do?
Okay.
Unlocked.
Okay, Dave, lock the comments.
They're done. They're done. I'm pretending because we're done already, but they're done.
Done. Okay, Duncan, if you want to throw something in there to make it dramatic, then please do. Okay, so the top comment is from Richard Shears. A simple answer that required no thought, he says. Big track. For years, this was circled without failure. The first thing that I went to. And, you might have guessed, it never materialised as a gift.
Oh.
And I've yet to own one. Poor Richard.
Kickstarter to buy Richard Big Track. They did a reissue a few years ago.
Yeah, they did.
Is he trying to hint to clear?
So Big Track, if you don't know, looked like an army tank from the future, had a calculator keypad on the top, and you would tap in the top and it would make lovely beeping noises. Beep, 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 forward 10, right 20 degrees, forward 30, you program it in, press start, and away it would trundle around your kitchen floor. If you were a really rich kid, you got a trailer with some rocks or something that went in the back of it, and it could tow the trailer around. Every kid wanted a Big Track, I think.
I had one.
It was cool.
I had one.
Chris had one. My brother had one. Dave,
6-year-old niece pulled the wheels off it when I was at school.
Yeah. And it all fed into robots, the buzz for robots, watching Short Circuit, Johnny Five, and wanting something like Johnny Five, and all of the rest, big buzz. Who wants to read the next one?
Dave.
I'll go. So, CS Marauder says the US had the Sears catalogue. Sears was an anchor store in the malls, which I think means it was a store that they wanted to have there so that other stores would want to open up next to Sears.
Right.
You could call a toll-free number and order stuff and pick it up at the mall or have it delivered or go to the store and shop there. It was a wonderful time. Hit the mall and go to the arcade and the food court. Great times. Here's a website that has catalogues going back to 1940. The 80s Sears catalogues are what you should have a look at. So they would be, I guess, is that the American contemporary to the Argos catalogue? Is that the closest equivalent they have? I would guess it would be.
I think Sears
link in the show notes,
bigger again than Argos. I think it was a very successful store, wasn't it?
But is that the closest they would have? They would look through the Sears catalogue in the same way we would look through the Argos catalogue, I guess. And he says the 1985 Sears Christmas book is perfect. Mid-80s American consumerism. The toys start on page 424. I'm
on the catalogue now that he's linked. I've gone to page 608, and there's a section called Computer Wonderland.
Oh.
Save $100 when you buy this C64 computer bundle. And it's showing a Commodore 64 bread bin with a flight simulator on the screen, disk drive, printer next to it. Just checking for a price. C64 computer on its own, $149.99.
I'm going to buy it.
Pretty good.
I don't like clicking on those catalogs because it makes you feel like you could just order it and you can't. It's like really exciting and then such a big letdown.
Oh, well, yeah, there's a good computer section there, so well worth a look. Chris, do you want to read our next section?
Yep, it's from Dave Dev Retro, and he says, "Oh man, Tin Can Alley. I always wanted that, and it was never to be. We used to cut out stuff from the Argos catalogue and create scrapbooks of all the stuff we wanted. Wow, that's one step beyond a big pyro, and we would never get. Oh, how depressing. Oh no,
Tin Can Alley was something that I always looked at and wanted." But you just kind of knew it wouldn't quite work as it looked. You knew it would just sort of fall over, or the bullet would just kind of trickle out of the gun, or I don't know.
You've got the real thing in the cave downstairs. You've got the sheriff one.
Oh, true.
Oh yes, yeah, not working yet, but yeah.
Did you guys circle anything that you really wanted for ages and ages, and then eventually got?
Gosh,
yeah.
Right, while you think about that, here's mine. AT-AT Walker. Years and years. It felt like forever that I want. This is my original, and it felt like forever I would circle this. They were quite expensive for what they were back in the day. I think they were £25 back in 1980. Whatever.
Millennium Falcon.
Millennium Falcon. So when I eventually got this, the funny thing is, it's pretty much the same year I slowly grew out of playing with Star Wars toys, but I haven't ever been able to let go of this yet. That was my circle. Every catalogue this was in until I got one.
I because I was into my microcomputers, I would look in the Argos catalogue, and more often than not, it became more and more console based rather than microcomputer based as the years went on. So I'd look at things like the Mega Drive and the Super Nintendo and what was out for it. I never circled those. I remember getting some Micro Machines once from it. That was a bit later on, but no, I don't. I think Big Track was up there as well. That was a really good shout from Richard. Yeah, there's lots more. Are there any other answers you want to pick out from this week's question of the week?
I like the Evil Knievel stunt
Evil
cycle.
Knievel
Evil
stunt
Knievel cycle. Yeah.
And NES.
That was from Generation Pixel.
Frosty Cheesecake says NES. What else have we got there? My favourite pages were the Star Wars He-Man mask toy section from Retro Mash Reddit.
Oh, mask.
Oh, I did have Castle Grayskull. I did have the He-Man Castle Grayskull with the
So did I.
action figures. The trapdoor in the
kids.
top. Okay. Toxic Seahorse wins. Crossbows and catapults. Never did get it, but man, that was great. That was just a game of pure destruction in the hallway. Me and my brother set up your castles, launch stuff at each other, and see which one. I don't even know if that was the rules of the game, but that's what we did. There's lots of answers. Casio G-Shock watch from Tech Made Easy.
Squelch 411. Do you see his comment? He's talking about Silica Systems, was his go-to catalog. So that's the one you read about the better micro than the one you had in it. So when you had the CPC, you would see the Silica Systems advert for the Atari ST and that. I love looking at Silica Systems.
With the Casio watches, if you want to feel like you're back in the 80s, just pick up today's Argos catalogue and go to the watch section because they haven't really changed.
They haven't changed, have they?
It's fantastic.
Time now for our question of the week, and I think we've decided we're going to go with the question that spontaneously came to us earlier when Chris was showing his signed Lego by, what show was it again? Lego Masters? You had
Grandmasters, Lego Grandmasters.
Masters, you had it signed by them. So this is a safe space. We are here to appreciate the things that you want to show off that perhaps you don't know who else to show them off to. So come to our question of the week, which will be pinned to the top of reddit.com/r/this week in retro. If possible, post a picture of a thing that you want to show off in the company of friends so we can all go, oh, that's cool. Doesn't have to be signed. Even better if it is signed. Dave?
Tell us why it matters to you, though.
Tell us why it matters. Yeah. Why is it important to you? It doesn't have to be something of great value. Maybe it's something of great sentimental value to you. Just come on, show off your stuff to us, and we'll look forward to seeing it. And we'll show. I think we'll probably end up showing more than 3 on next week's show because I'm really looking forward to the answers on this one. So go and take part. Thank you, as always, for listening. Sorry again that we were away for a week, and we'll be around. We've got an uninterrupted schedule for the next few weeks, haven't we? Coming weeks, yeah, lots more this week.
You're not here next week, Neil. I think you're off next week.
I'm not, because I'm doing another kids' brief history of video games at the cave, which is already fully booked. So the kids are coming to the cave, and I've got to be prepared for that.
Brilliant.
Yeah, go on, Dave.
I booked a guest, so I've got a guest for next week. So there will be 3 of us
already.
Nice.
Yeah, I'm worried that there might be an improvement. So I'd be concerned, Neil.
I've just remembered I'm going to be outnumbered. No more spoilers. Damn it.
They probably know how to groom their beard and everything. God.
Ooh. I'm not sure they do.
No, I don't.
Do you know who the guest is, Neil?
I don't know who the guest is. No. Are we going to share that?
No. I'm not going to say because it's recorded. We don't get. We're not going to. Can I give you a clue? I'll give you a clue.
Go on.
They like Atari STs.
Well, that narrows it down.
I'm going to be outnumbered.
Yeah, millions of people.
Good.
All you know is they've got great taste.
Until next week. Thank you, everyone, for watching. I won't blame you if you skip the Atari ST episode. Take care, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
I think I'm busy next week.
This Week in Retro was presented by Neil from RNC The Cave, Chris from 005 AGIMA, and Dave. It was produced by me, Duncan Styles. The podcast version of the show is available through your favourite podcaster, including Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and the video version is available on the This Week in Retro YouTube channel.
Join our community subreddit at r/thisweekinretro to suggest and vote on the stories we cover on the show. If you watch This Week in Retro on YouTube, please give us a like and subscribe to help us reach new viewers.
If you enjoy our show and would like to support it, then please check out the link to our Patreon page in the show notes or description. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time for more up-to-date news for out-of-date tech.